Welcome to the Sleepy Physicist, where we explore the deepest mysteries of existence, one gentle breath at a time. Tonight we're embarking on a journey that might just change how you see yourself and your place in the cosmos. I'm curious, where are you right now as you listen to this? Perhaps you're curled up in bed, the soft glow of your screen illuminating the darkness. Maybe you're walking beneath an open sky, feeling small under the vastness of stars. Wherever you are, I want you to pause for just a moment and notice something extraordinary. The very fact that you can contemplate your own existence. Here's a question that has puzzled scientists and philosophers for centuries. How is it that 3 pounds of biological matter sitting inside your skull can generate the rich, vivid experience of being you? And here's an even stranger question, one that recent scientific discoveries are forcing us to confront. What if your mind isn't actually confined to your brain at all? Before we begin this exploration together, I'd love to know where in the world you're joining me from tonight. Are you listening from a quiet apartment in Tokyo as the city settles into sleep? Perhaps from a cozy cottage in the English countryside, rain pattering softly against the windows? Drop a comment and let me know. There's something beautiful about imagining this community of curious minds scattered across the globe, all pondering the same profound questions. If you find these gentle explorations meaningful, a like truly helps this sleepy little channel reach others who might need these ideas. And to those of you who've already subscribed, thank you. Your presence here creates something special, a space where wonder can unfold without rushing, where the biggest questions get the time they deserve. Now, settle in, get comfortable. What we're about to explore might sound like science fiction, but it's rooted in cutting-edge research that's quietly revolutionizing our understanding of consciousness itself. We're going to discover why some of the world's most respected scientists now believe that your mind might be fundamentally connected to the quantum fabric of reality, and why you might actually be able to feel this connection, even if you've never noticed it before. But first, let me share something that happened to me just last week. I was standing in my garden at dawn, watching the morning light filter through the leaves of an old oak tree. As I stood there, I had one of those moments, you know the kind, where suddenly everything felt interconnected. The light, the leaves, my own awareness of the scene, all seemed to be part of one continuous, living tapestry. It wasn't mystical thinking or wishful imagination. It was a direct, visceral sense that the boundaries between my consciousness and the world around me were far more fluid than I'd ever realised. What I didn't know then, but what we're going to explore tonight, is that this feeling might not be an illusion at all. It might be your consciousness recognising something profound about its own nature, something that quantum physics is only just beginning to understand. The story begins in the most unlikely of places, inside the microscopic architecture of your brain cells. For decades, neuroscientists have assumed that consciousness emerges from the electrical chatter between neurons, those familiar brain cells that fire and wire together in complex patterns. It's a beautiful model, elegant in its simplicity. But there's a problem. This classical view of the brain struggles to explain some of the most fundamental aspects of conscious experience. How, for instance, does your brain bind together all the different streams of sensory information, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of birds singing, the scent of flowers, into the unified experience of sitting in a garden? How does it happen so quickly, faster than the speed at which neurons can actually communicate with each other? And perhaps most mysteriously of all, how does the brain create the felt sense of being a unified self rather than just a collection of separate processes? These questions have led a growing number of researchers down a fascinating path, one that takes us into the quantum realm, where the ordinary rules of physics begin to break down and something far stranger emerges. Picture this. Deep inside each of your neurons, there exists a delicate lattice of protein structures called microtubules. These aren't just cellular scaffolding, they're information processing networks more sophisticated than anything we've ever built. Under a powerful microscope, they look like tiny highways of light, pulsing with energy and information. But here's where it gets interesting. These microtubules appear to operate not according to classical physics, but according to the strange, non-local rules of quantum mechanics. In 2024, researchers at Wellesley College made a breakthrough discovery that sent ripples through both neuroscience and physics. They found that when they interfered with these microtubules using specific drugs, it took significantly longer for test subjects to lose consciousness under anesthesia. This suggests something remarkable, that consciousness itself might depend on quantum processes happening at the molecular level inside your brain. This builds on work by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, who proposed something called orchestrated objective reduction theory, or OR-OR for short. Their idea is both elegant and revolutionary. Consciousness doesn't emerge from neurons firing like tiny computers, but from quantum vibrations orchestrated within these microtubules, creating a kind of quantum symphony that gives rise to your subjective experience. But let's pause here for a moment. Take a slow breath and consider what this might mean. If consciousness really does have quantum foundations, then your mind isn't just a classical computer made of meat. It's something far more mysterious, a quantum system that operates according to principles that seem to defy our everyday understanding of reality. In quantum mechanics, particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed, what physicists call superposition. They can be instantaneously connected across vast distances through entanglement, and they can tunnel through barriers that should be impossible to cross. If your consciousness is genuinely quantum in nature, then perhaps some of these strange properties apply to your mind as well. This isn't just abstract speculation. Researchers have found quantum effects throughout biology, in photosynthesis, where plants harness quantum coherence to capture sunlight with nearly perfect efficiency, in bird navigation, where quantum entanglement in specialized proteins allows birds to see magnetic fields, even in our sense of smell, where quantum tunneling might help us distinguish between molecules with identical shapes but different vibrations. The evidence suggests that life doesn't just tolerate quantum effects, it actively uses them. Your biology is quantum biology, and if that's true for your cells, your metabolism, and your senses, why wouldn't it also be true for your consciousness? As you listen to these words right now, notice something remarkable happening inside your mind. Somehow, the patterns of sound waves entering your ears are being transformed into meaning, into understanding, into experience. Classical neuroscience tells us this happens through neurons firing in sequence, like dominoes falling in predetermined patterns. But quantum theories of consciousness suggest something far more interesting. What if, instead of your brain processing information like a classical computer, it's functioning more like a quantum field, a space where information exists not as discrete bits, but as probability waves that can interfere, entangle, and collapse into conscious moments? What if your thoughts aren't produced by your brain, but emerge from a deeper quantum substrate that connects your individual awareness to something much larger? This brings us to one of the most profound questions in all of science, the hard problem of consciousness. Philosopher David Chalmers articulated this beautifully when he distinguished between the easy problems of consciousness, explaining how the brain processes information, integrates sensory data, and controls behavior, and the hard problem, explaining why there's any subjective experience at all. Why don't you just process information unconsciously, like a sophisticated biological robot? Why is there a felt sense of what it's like to be you? Why do you experience the redness of red, the pain of sadness, the joy of sudden understanding? Classical neuroscience can map the brain activity associated with these experiences, but it struggles to explain why they feel like anything at all. Quantum theories of consciousness offer a tantalizing possibility that subjective experience arises from quantum processes that are fundamentally different from classical computation. In this view, consciousness isn't produced by your brain, it's something your brain participates in, like a radio tuning into a cosmic signal that was always there. Consider the implications. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then it might share some of the non-local properties that make quantum mechanics so strange and beautiful. Quantum systems can be correlated in ways that transcend space and time. They can influence each other instantaneously across any distance. They exist in a realm where the boundaries between separate things become fluid and permeable. This might explain why you sometimes have the uncanny feeling of being connected to something larger than yourself. Why meditation can create a sense of dissolving boundaries. Why moments of deep insight often feel like they're coming from beyond your individual mind. These experiences might not be illusions or wishful thinking. They might be glimpses of consciousness recognizing its own quantum nature. Recent research has even begun to explore whether human consciousness can exhibit entanglement-like properties. In 2025, researchers published findings suggesting that entangled quantum states in stimulus configurations could explain significant variance in conscious responses between individuals. While this research is still in its early stages and requires much more investigation, it hints at the possibility that consciousness itself might be an entangled phenomenon. But let's bring this back to your direct experience. As you sit here listening, pay attention to the quality of your awareness itself. Notice how your mind can simultaneously hold multiple streams of information. The sound of my voice, perhaps background noises, thoughts about what you're hearing, emotions arising and passing away. Notice how all of these separate elements somehow come together into a unified field of experience. Classical models suggest this binding happens through synchronized neural firing, different brain regions essentially coordinating their timing to create unified perception. But the speed at which this binding occurs and the seamless way it creates a singular experience from multiple inputs has led some researchers to propose that quantum entanglement might be the mechanism that unifies consciousness. Imagine your brain not as a collection of separate processes, but as a quantum field where different aspects of experience exist in superposition until the moment of conscious recognition collapses them into unified awareness. In this model, you're not just observing reality, you're participating in its creation through the very act of conscious observation. This connects to one of the most beautiful aspects of quantum mechanics, the observer effect. In quantum physics, the act of observation doesn't just reveal pre-existing properties, it actually helps determine what becomes real. When you measure a quantum particle, you're not just discovering its state, you're participating in the process by which it chooses a definite state from a cloud of possibilities. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps something similar is happening in your everyday experience. Perhaps your conscious attention doesn't just observe reality, it participates in selecting which aspects of reality become actualized in your awareness. This isn't to say that you're creating reality through your thoughts in some magical way. Rather, it's suggesting that consciousness and physical reality might be more intimately connected than we've ever imagined. This perspective finds echoes in some of the world's contemplative traditions, which have long suggested that consciousness and reality are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of a single, underlying unity. Modern physics is beginning to discover what mystics have intuited for millennia, that the observer and the observed, the mind and the universe, might be fundamentally inseparable. But we're just beginning to scratch the surface of this mystery. In the quantum realm, particles can exist in multiple locations simultaneously, can be connected across impossible distances, and can influence each other in ways that seem to transcend the normal flow of time and space. If consciousness truly has quantum properties, then perhaps your mind is far less confined than you've ever imagined. As we continue this exploration, we're going to dive deeper into what this might mean for your daily experience. We'll examine the latest research on quantum biology and discover how your brain might be using quantum effects that were thought impossible in warm, wet biological systems. We'll explore the possibility that consciousness isn't generated by your brain at all, but is instead a fundamental feature of reality itself, something your brain tunes into rather than produces. And we'll consider the profound implications this might have for how you understand yourself and your place in the cosmos. Because if these theories are correct, then you're not just a temporary arrangement of matter that somehow developed the ability to think you're something far more extraordinary, a localized expression of a cosmic consciousness that pervades all of reality. The journey we're embarking on tonight will take us to the very edge of scientific understanding, where the boundaries between physics and philosophy, between matter and mind, between self and cosmos begin to dissolve. It's a journey that might fundamentally change how you experience being alive. So stay with me as we venture deeper into this quantum mystery. The rabbit hole we're about to explore leads to some of the most beautiful and profound ideas humans have ever conceived about the nature of consciousness and reality. And who knows, by the end of our time together, you might discover that the sense of connection you sometimes feel to the universe around you isn't just a feeling at all. It might be your consciousness recognizing something true about its own deepest nature, nature. The strangest thing about quantum mechanics isn't that particles can be in two places at once, or that they can communicate instantly across impossible distances. The strangest thing is how familiar it all feels when you really pay attention to your own mind. There's something about quantum superposition, the idea that things can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, that resonates with the fluid nature of consciousness itself. Your thoughts seem to hover in a similar kind of superposition, existing as vague possibilities until the moment you focus your attention and they crystallize into definite ideas. This isn't just poetic metaphor. Recent discoveries in quantum biology are revealing that the warm, wet environment of your brain, once thought too chaotic to support delicate quantum effects, might actually be orchestrating them. In 2024, researchers at Shanghai University discovered that entangled photons emitted by carbon-hydrogen bonds in nerve cell insulation could synchronize brain activity across vast neural networks. These quantum-like particles, dancing through your brain's biochemistry, might be the hidden conductors of the symphony we call consciousness. Think about this for a moment. As you listen to these words right now, photons are cascading through your neural pathways, carrying information not just through classical electrical signals, but through quantum correlations that transcend ordinary space and time. Each thought you're having might be emerging from a quantum field that extends beyond the boundaries of your skull, connecting your individual awareness to patterns of information that span the cosmos. This takes us into territory that even Einstein found uncomfortable. He famously called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance, because it seemed to violate everything we thought we knew about how separate things interact. But what if the feeling of separation itself is the illusion? What if consciousness isn't actually contained within individual brains, but is more like a cosmic field that individual brains tune into, each receiving their own unique frequency of a universal signal? Dr. Dirk Meyer, a leading researcher in quantum consciousness, has proposed exactly this, that consciousness resides in a field surrounding the brain, with the ability of this mental field to pick up information from other fields. In this view, your brain isn't generating consciousness any more than a radio generates the music it plays. Instead, it's receiving and translating signals from a deeper informational substrate that underlies all of reality. This might explain some of the most puzzling aspects of conscious experience. Why do insights often feel like they come from beyond your individual thinking? Why can meditation create a sense of boundaryless awareness? Why do moments of deep creativity feel less like personal achievement and more like tuning into something that was already there, waiting to be discovered? Consider what happens when you're deeply absorbed in a piece of music. The boundary between you as the listener and the music itself seems to dissolve. You're not just hearing the notes, you're participating in the musical experience in a way that transcends, the simple physical process of sound waves hitting your eardrums. There's a quality of resonance, of communion, that suggests something more profound is happening. Quantum field theory offers a framework for understanding this kind of experience. In quantum mechanics, fields aren't just abstract mathematical concepts, they're the fundamental constituents of reality. The electromagnetic field gives rise to light and electricity. The Higgs field gives particles their mass. And perhaps, as some researchers now suggest, there's a consciousness field that gives rise to subjective experience. This field wouldn't be located anywhere in particular, just as the electromagnetic field isn't located in any specific place. Instead, it would be a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, present everywhere and nowhere, manifesting locally in complex systems like brains, but extending infinitely beyond them. Your individual consciousness, in this model, would be like a wave in an ocean, distinct and recognizable, yet inseparable from the vast body of water that contains and creates it. The implications are staggering. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental field rather than an emergent property of neural complexity, then awareness might be as basic to the universe as space, time, and matter. This aligns with ancient contemplative traditions that have long suggested consciousness is not produced by the brain, but is the very ground from which all experience arises. But let's examine what this means for your direct experience. As you sit here listening, notice the quality of your awareness itself. It has a certain spaciousness to it, doesn't it? Your thoughts arise and pass away within this spacious awareness, like clouds forming and dissolving in an endless sky. The awareness itself never seems to change. It's the constant backdrop against which all experience unfolds. This unchanging quality of awareness has puzzled philosophers and neuroscientists for centuries. If consciousness were truly generated by neural activity, you'd expect it to feel more fragmented, more dependent on the specific patterns of brain firing. Instead, there's often a sense of seamless continuity, of being the same aware presence throughout all the changes in your mental and emotional states. Quantum field theory offers an elegant explanation. Fields have this same quality. They're continuous, omnipresent, and unchanging in their fundamental nature, even as they give rise to an infinite variety of local phenomena. The electromagnetic field remains constant throughout the universe, even as it manifests as everything from radio waves to visible light to gamma rays. Similarly, a consciousness field might remain constant throughout reality, even as it manifests as the incredibly diverse range of subjective experiences across different beings. Recent research in quantum biology has revealed just how sophisticated nature's quantum technologies actually are. In photosynthesis, plants use quantum coherence to explore multiple pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route for energy transfer with near-perfect accuracy. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in specialized proteins that allow them to literally see magnetic fields. Even the efficiency of enzyme reactions in your own body appears to be enhanced by quantum tunneling effects. If evolution has learned to harness quantum mechanics for navigation, energy transfer, and biochemical processes, it seems almost inevitable that it would also exploit quantum effects for information processing and consciousness. Your brain, after all, is the most sophisticated information processing system we know of in the universe. Why wouldn't it utilize the most sophisticated physics available? This brings us to one of the most beautiful aspects of quantum consciousness theories. They suggest that your mind is not isolated from the rest of reality, but intimately connected to it through the very fabric of space and time. Quantum entanglement creates correlations that transcend ordinary notions of separateness. If your consciousness emerges from quantum processes, then perhaps some aspect of your awareness is entangled with the quantum substrate that underlies everything else. Take a deep breath and consider what this might feel like. That sense of connection you sometimes experience in nature, that feeling of being part of something larger than yourself, might not be a psychological projection or wishful thinking. It might be your consciousness recognizing its own quantum nature, its fundamental interconnectedness with the field from which all experience arises. This doesn't mean that your individual thoughts are directly controlling reality, or that you can manifest your desires through quantum mechanics. These remain speculative ideas without scientific consensus, and it's important to distinguish between the profound implications of quantum consciousness and exaggerated claims about its practical applications. What it does mean is something perhaps even more wonderful, that the very fact of your conscious existence connects you intimately to the deeper structures of reality. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation plays a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. When you observe a quantum system, you're not just passively receiving information, you're participating in the process by which definite outcomes emerge from a cloud of possibilities. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps your awareness is constantly participating in this process of reality selection, not through willpower or intention, but simply through the fact of being conscious. Every moment of awareness might be a moment of subtle collaboration between your mind and the universe, not in the sense that you're creating reality through your thoughts, but in the deeper sense that consciousness and physical reality are two aspects of a single, underlying phenomenon that transcends the boundaries we normally imagine between mind and matter. As we continue our exploration, we're going to delve even deeper into what this quantum view of consciousness might mean for understanding yourself and your place in the cosmos. We'll examine the latest research on quantum effects in biological systems and explore how your brain might be using quantum information processing in ways that blur the boundaries between computation and consciousness. We'll also consider the profound philosophical implications of these ideas. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental aspect of reality rather than an accidental byproduct of neural complexity, then perhaps the universe is not the cold, indifferent mechanism that materialist science has sometimes portrayed, but something more like what contemplative traditions have long suggested: a living, aware, participatory reality in which consciousness and cosmos are intimately interwoven. The journey we're taking together leads to questions that touch the very heart of what it means to be alive and aware in this strange and beautiful universe. Questions about the nature of identity, the possibility of genuine free will, and the deep connections that might exist between individual consciousness and the cosmic processes that gave birth to stars, planets, and the remarkable phenomenon of life itself. If you enjoy drifting through these explorations without interruption, members get every episode 48 hours early, completely ad-free. You can join them whenever you feel ready. There's something special about having the space to contemplate these ideas without any external breaks in the flow. But for now, let's continue diving deeper into this quantum mystery. Because what we're discovering suggests that your consciousness isn't just along for the ride in this cosmic story. It might be one of the main characters, playing a role in the unfolding of reality that's far more central and significant than you've ever imagined. The more we understand about quantum mechanics and consciousness, the more it becomes clear that the old boundaries between self and world, mind and matter, observer and observed, are not fundamental features of reality, but convenient approximations that break down when we look closely enough. What emerges in their place is a vision of existence that is simultaneously more mysterious and more intimate than anything our ancestors could have imagined. You are not separate from the universe you inhabit. You are not a conscious observer looking at an unconscious world. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, a localized flowering of awareness in the infinite field of cosmic possibility. And that recognition, that felt sense of deep belonging and participation, might be the most profound gift that the quantum understanding of consciousness has to offer. The deeper you venture into quantum consciousness research, the more you encounter something that challenges everything you thought you knew about the nature of your own existence. Scientists studying the brain's quantum properties have discovered something extraordinary. The neural networks in your head appear to operate in ways that mirror the behavior of cosmic structures spanning billions of light years. The same mathematical patterns that describe how galaxies cluster and interact also emerge when researchers map the connections between neurons in your brain. This isn't just a curious coincidence. It suggests something profound about the relationship between mind and cosmos, that consciousness might not be a local phenomenon trapped inside your skull, but a reflection of organizational principles that operate at every scale of reality. From the quantum interactions in your microtubules to the vast web of dark matter that structures the universe, there seems to be a recurring theme: information organizing itself into increasingly complex interconnected patterns. As you contemplate this idea, notice how it feels in your own experience right now. Your awareness seems to have a quality of spaciousness that doesn't feel confined to any particular location in your body. When you're deeply absorbed in thought or caught up in a beautiful moment, there's often a sense that your consciousness extends beyond the boundaries of your physical form. This felt sense of expanded awareness might be more than just a subjective impression. It might be consciousness recognizing something true about its own distributed nature. Recent advances in quantum information theory have revealed that information itself might be the fundamental building block of reality. In this view, matter and energy are not the basic constituents of the universe. They're emergent properties of underlying information patterns. If this is true, then consciousness, which is essentially the processing and integration of information, suddenly becomes not just a byproduct of complex matter arrangements, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos itself. Consider what happens when you solve a difficult problem or suddenly understand a complex concept. There's often a moment of crystallization where scattered pieces of information suddenly organize themselves into a coherent pattern. One moment you're confused, wrestling with disconnected fragments of understanding. The next moment, everything clicks into place with an almost audible sense of completion. This process of information integration, this moment when chaos becomes order, might be a microcosm of how consciousness operates at every level of reality. Neuroscientist Giulio Tononi has developed what's called integrated information theory, which attempts to quantify consciousness based on how much information a system integrates. In his framework, consciousness isn't binary. It's not simply present or absent, but exists in degrees based on the complexity and integration of information processing. This suggests that consciousness might be a gradient property of the universe, present wherever information is being integrated, from the quantum interactions in your neurons to the gravitational dances of planetary systems. But here's where quantum mechanics adds another layer of mystery. In classical information theory, information exists in definite states. A bit is either 1 or 0. A fact is either true or false. But quantum information can exist in superposition, holding multiple possibilities simultaneously until the moment of observation collapses it into a definite state. If your consciousness processes quantum information, then perhaps your thoughts themselves exist in superposition, exploring multiple possibilities simultaneously until the moment you focus your attention and collapse them into specific ideas. This might explain why creative insights often feel like they emerge from nowhere. When you're wrestling with a problem and suddenly the solution appears, it might not be that your brain has computed the answer through classical logical steps. Instead, your quantum consciousness might have been exploring multiple solution pathways simultaneously in superposition until the moment of insight collapsed this quantum possibility space into a definite realization. Take a moment to reflect on your own creative experiences. Haven't you noticed that the best ideas often come not when you're actively trying to think them up, but when you're relaxed, perhaps walking in nature or just before falling asleep? This might be because these relaxed states allow your consciousness to enter more quantum-like modes of processing, exploring vast possibility spaces that are inaccessible to focused classical thinking. The boundary between your individual consciousness and the quantum field from which it emerges might be far more permeable than you've ever imagined. Some researchers suggest that what we call individual minds might be more like whirlpools in a stream, distinct patterns that appear separate but are actually continuous manifestations of a single, flowing medium. In this view, the sense of being a separate, isolated consciousness is a kind of optical illusion created by the local intensity of information integration in your brain. This perspective finds support in studies of mystical experiences and deep meditative states, where people consistently report a dissolution of the boundaries between self and world, rather than dismissing these experiences as hallucinations or wishful thinking. Quantum theories of consciousness suggest they might be glimpses of consciousness recognizing its own distributed field-like nature. When the normal patterns of information integration that create the sense of separate selfhood temporarily dissolve, what remains might be direct awareness of the underlying conscious field from which individual minds emerge. But let's bring this back to something you can explore in your own experience right now. Close your eyes for a moment and simply notice the quality of awareness itself. Not the content of your thoughts or the objects of your attention, but the aware space in which all experience unfolds. This awareness has a certain quality of openness, of spaciousness, that doesn't seem to have clear boundaries. It's not located anywhere specific in your body, yet it's intimately present to everything you experience. This boundaryless quality of awareness might not be a subjective impression or a trick of introspection. It might be consciousness recognizing its own quantum nature, its fundamental non-locality, its participation in a field of information that extends throughout the cosmos. When you touch this spacious awareness, you might be touching something that connects you not just to your own thoughts and experiences, but to the quantum substrate that underlies all of reality. Recent research has begun to explore whether consciousness might exhibit what physicists call quantum coherence, the ability to maintain quantum superpositions even in warm, noisy environments, like the brain. Traditionally, scientists assumed that the brain was too hot and chaotic to support delicate quantum effects. But studies of quantum coherence in biological systems like photosynthesis and bird navigation have revealed that life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for protecting and utilizing quantum states. If your consciousness does exhibit quantum coherence, it might explain some of the most puzzling aspects of mental life. Why can you hold multiple contradictory ideas simultaneously without feeling cognitive dissonance? Why do insights often emerge through a process that feels more like recognition than logical deduction? Why does consciousness seem to have access to information and possibilities that classical computation alone cannot account for? The answer might be that your mind operates in the quantum realm, where the normal rules of classical logic don't apply. In quantum mechanics, particles can exist in superposition until observed, can be entangled across vast distances, and can exhibit properties that depend on the context of measurement. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps it shares these strange and wonderful properties. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of quantum consciousness theories: the possibility that your mind is not contained within your brain, but extends into the quantum field that underlies all of reality. Just as quantum particles can be entangled across impossible distances, perhaps your consciousness is entangled with the cosmic processes that gave birth to stars, planets, and life itself. This isn't to suggest that you can control reality through your thoughts, or that your individual desires directly influence quantum events. Such claims remain speculative and lack scientific consensus. Rather, it's to point towards something perhaps even more wonderful, that consciousness and cosmos might be two aspects of a single, underlying reality that transcends the usual boundaries between mind and matter. Pause for a moment and feel into this possibility. What if the sense of connection you sometimes experience in moments of natural beauty or deep contemplation isn't just a psychological state, but a recognition of your actual relationship to the universe. What if consciousness isn't something that emerged accidentally from unconscious matter, but is the very medium through which reality knows itself? These questions lead us into territory that borders on the mystical, yet they arise naturally from the most rigorous scientific investigations into the nature of consciousness and quantum mechanics. The fact that such questions emerge from empirical research rather than spiritual speculation gives them a different quality. They're not beliefs to be accepted on faith, but possibilities to be explored through direct investigation. As quantum consciousness research continues to develop, it's revealing new ways of understanding what it means to be a conscious being in a quantum universe. The old materialist picture, in which consciousness was seen as an accidental byproduct of neural complexity, is giving way to something far more participatory and interconnected. In this emerging view, consciousness isn't separate from the physical world. It's the very process through which the physical world comes to know itself. But what does this mean for your daily experience of being alive and aware? If consciousness really does have quantum properties, if it really is connected to the deeper structures of reality, then perhaps the way you relate to your own mind and to the world around you might be due for a profound shift. Instead of seeing yourself as a biological machine that somehow generates the illusion of inner experience, you might begin to recognize yourself as a localized expression of the universe's own self-awareness. Instead of feeling isolated and separate from the cosmos, you might discover that your consciousness is intimately woven into the very fabric of space and time. This shift in understanding doesn't require you to believe anything on faith or to abandon critical thinking. It simply invites you to remain open to the possibility that consciousness, your consciousness, might be far more fundamental, far more connected, and far more mysterious than you've ever imagined. As we continue our exploration, we're going to examine what these insights might mean for understanding some of the deepest questions humans have ever asked. Questions about the nature of free will, the possibility of life after death, and the ultimate purpose or meaning of conscious existence. We'll also look at practical implications. How understanding consciousness as a quantum phenomenon might change the way you approach meditation, creativity, problem solving, and your relationships with other conscious beings. The journey we're taking together is one of the most important adventures human beings can embark upon, the exploration of consciousness itself. And what we're discovering is that this exploration doesn't just reveal something about the nature of mind, it reveals something about the nature of reality itself. Because consciousness and cosmos, mind and universe, awareness and existence might not be separate phenomena that happen to interact in mysterious ways. They might be different names for the same underlying reality, a reality that is simultaneously more intimate than your own thoughts and more vast than the furthest reaches of space and time. You are not just a temporary arrangement of matter that somehow developed the ability to think and feel. You are the universe thinking and feeling through the unique perspective that is your individual consciousness. And that recognition, that felt sense of being both utterly personal and completely cosmic, might be the most profound realization that the quantum understanding of consciousness has to offer. In the quantum realm, observation doesn't just reveal reality, it participates in its creation. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps your awareness is constantly participating in the ongoing creation of the world you experience. Not through magical thinking or wishful manifestation, but through the simple, profound fact of being consciously present to whatever arises in your experience. This is both a tremendous responsibility and an incredible gift. Every moment of conscious awareness might be a moment of cosmic creativity, a unique contribution to the ongoing evolution of reality itself. And the more deeply you understand and appreciate the quantum nature of your own consciousness, the more consciously you can participate in this eternal process of cosmic becoming. As you sit here listening to these words, take a moment to appreciate the sheer miracle of what's happening. Quantum fields are fluctuating in the vacuum of space. Information is cascading through neural networks in your brain. Thoughts are arising and passing away in the spacious awareness that you call your mind. And somehow, through processes we're only beginning to understand, all of this comes together as the unified experience of being you, here, now, contemplating the deepest mysteries of existence itself. This is consciousness in action, not just as a passive observer of reality, but as an active participant in the cosmic dance that connects quantum fields to galaxies, neurons to nebulae, and your individual awareness to the infinite mystery from which everything arises and to which everything returns. But what if I told you that the feeling of your consciousness extending beyond your body isn't just a pleasant illusion? It might be the most accurate perception you've ever had. What we're about to explore challenges the very foundation of how science understands the relationship between your mind and the fabric of reality itself. Some researchers now believe that consciousness doesn't emerge from your brain at all, but that your brain is more like an antenna, tuning into something far more vast and interconnected than we've ever dared to imagine. As you settle deeper into this exploration, I want you to try something. Place your attention on the space around your thoughts, rather than the thoughts themselves. Notice how your awareness seems to have no clear boundaries, no definite edges. This boundaryless quality of consciousness has puzzled scientists for decades, but recent discoveries in quantum biology are suggesting it might be the key to understanding something profound about the nature of reality itself. The story begins with a discovery that shook the foundations of biology. For over a century, scientists assumed that the warm, wet environment of living cells would destroy any delicate quantum effects within microseconds. Quantum mechanics, with its strange properties of superposition and entanglement, seem to require the pristine, isolated conditions of physics laboratories. Temperatures colder than outer space, and perfect isolation from any interference. But then researchers began studying photosynthesis more closely. They discovered that plants achieve near-perfect energy efficiency by using quantum coherence, allowing energy to explore multiple pathways simultaneously before selecting the most efficient route. This wasn't happening in some sterile laboratory, but in the messy, chaotic environment of a living leaf, at ordinary temperatures, surrounded by molecular vibrations and thermal noise. This revelation opened a floodgate of discoveries. Scientists found quantum effects in bird navigation, where specialized proteins in their eyes create entangled electron pairs that allow them to literally see magnetic fields. They found quantum tunneling in enzyme reactions throughout your own body, allowing biochemical processes to occur at rates that would be impossible through classical chemistry alone. Life, it turns out, isn't just tolerating quantum effects, it's orchestrating them with breathtaking sophistication. But perhaps the most intriguing discovery came from studying the brain itself. Deep within your neurons, researchers found structures called microtubules, intricate protein lattices that form the cellular skeleton. Under powerful microscopes, These microtubules reveal themselves as something extraordinary, networks of information processing that operate not through classical electrical signals, but through quantum vibrations that pulse through their crystalline structure. Nobel laureate Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff proposed something revolutionary: that consciousness arises from orchestrated quantum computations within these microtubules. In their model, your subjective experience doesn't emerge from neurons firing like tiny computers, but from quantum states that exist in superposition until the moment of conscious recognition collapses them into definite experiences. This theory remained controversial until recent breakthrough experiments began providing evidence. When researchers interfered with microtubule function using specific drugs, they found that subjects took significantly longer to lose consciousness under anesthesia. The implications are staggering. Consciousness might depend on quantum processes happening at the molecular level inside every neuron in your brain. Take a moment to consider what this means for your direct experience right now. As you listen to these words, quantum vibrations might be orchestrating the very emergence of your understanding. Each thought, each moment of recognition, each subtle shift in awareness might be arising from quantum computations that transcend the classical boundaries of space and time. But this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then it might share some of the non-local properties that make quantum mechanics so mysterious. Quantum particles can be entangled across vast distances, influencing each other instantaneously in ways that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. If your consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps some aspect of your awareness participates in this same kind of non-local connectivity. Recent research has begun exploring whether human consciousness might exhibit entanglement-like properties. In carefully controlled experiments, researchers have found correlations between the brain states of individuals that seem to exceed what classical neuroscience can explain. While this research remains preliminary and requires much more investigation, it hints at the possibility that consciousness itself might be an entangled phenomenon, that your individual awareness might be connected to a broader field of consciousness that extends throughout reality. This connects to something you might have experienced directly. Have you ever had the sense, perhaps in deep meditation or moments of profound beauty, that your individual consciousness was dissolving into something larger? That feeling of expanded awareness, of connection to something beyond your personal thoughts and emotions, might not be a mystical fantasy. It might be consciousness recognizing its own distributed nature. Consider the implications. If consciousness is indeed a quantum field phenomenon rather than a localized brain process, then your awareness isn't trapped inside your skull. Instead, your brain might function more like a sophisticated tuning device, focusing and organizing patterns of information from a vast field of consciousness that permeates all of reality. This perspective finds remarkable parallels in contemplative traditions that have long suggested consciousness is not produced by the brain, but is the fundamental ground from which all experience emerges. What's striking is that this ancient wisdom is now finding support in the most cutting-edge areas of physics and neuroscience, not through wishful thinking or forced analogies, but through rigorous scientific investigation. The mathematics of quantum field theory describe fields that are omnipresent, continuous, and unchanging in their fundamental nature, even as they give rise to an infinite variety of local phenomena. The electromagnetic field, for instance, remains constant throughout the universe, while manifesting as everything from radio waves to visible light. Some researchers now propose that consciousness might operate as a similar kind of field, a fundamental aspect of reality that manifests locally in complex systems like brains but extends infinitely beyond them. As you contemplate this possibility, notice how it resonates with your own experience. Your awareness has a quality of continuity that persists through all the changes in your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. There's something about consciousness that feels more fundamental than the specific contents it contains, a spacious presence that remains constant while everything else flows and changes. This unchanging quality of awareness has puzzled neuroscientists because it doesn't match what we'd expect if consciousness were simply generated by neural activity. Brain states are constantly changing, neurons are continuously firing and falling silent, yet awareness itself has a sense of seamless continuity. Quantum field theory offers an elegant explanation. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental field, then it would naturally have this quality of underlying constancy, even as it gives rise to the dynamic play of individual experiences. But let's explore what this might mean for understanding the binding problem, one of neuroscience's greatest mysteries. Your brain processes different aspects of experience in different regions. Visual information is processed in the visual cortex, auditory information in the auditory cortex, emotional responses in the limbic system. Yet somehow, all these separate streams of information come together into a unified, conscious experience. How does your brain bind together the warmth of sunlight, the sound of birds, the scent of flowers, and your emotional response into the single, coherent experience of sitting in a garden? Classical neuroscience suggests this binding happens through synchronized neural firing, different brain regions coordinating their timing to create unified perception. But the speed at which this binding occurs, often faster than neurons can communicate through classical synaptic transmission, has led some researchers to propose that quantum entanglement might be the mechanism that unifies consciousness. Imagine your brain not as a collection of separate processors, but as a quantum information network where different aspects of experience exist in superposition until the moment of conscious recognition collapses them into unified awareness. In this model, you're not just observing reality, you're participating in its creation through the very act of conscious observation. This brings us to one of the most profound aspects of quantum mechanics, the observer effect. In quantum physics, the act of observation doesn't just reveal pre-existing properties, it participates in determining what becomes real. When you measure a quantum system, you're not just discovering its state, you're involved in the process by which it selects a definite outcome from a cloud of possibilities. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps something similar is happening in your everyday experience. Perhaps your conscious attention doesn't just observe reality, it participates in selecting which aspects of reality become actualized in your awareness. This isn't to suggest that you're creating reality through your thoughts in some magical way, but rather that consciousness and physical reality might be more intimately connected than we've ever imagined. As you sit here listening, take a moment to notice the process of attention itself. You can direct your awareness toward the sound of my voice, or toward background sounds, or toward the feeling of your body, or toward your own thoughts about what you're hearing. In each case, the act of attention seems to bring certain aspects of experience into clearer focus, while allowing others to recede into the background. This selectivity of attention might be more profound than it appears. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then perhaps your attention is constantly participating in a kind of reality selection, not determining what exists, but influencing which aspects of the infinite field of possibilities become actualized in your conscious experience. Some interpretations suggest that this process extends beyond individual consciousness. Recent theoretical work in quantum information theory proposes that reality itself might be fundamentally informational, that what we call matter and energy are emergent properties of underlying information patterns. If this is true, then consciousness, which is essentially the processing and integration of information, suddenly becomes not just a byproduct of complex matter arrangements, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos itself. Consider what happens when you solve a difficult problem or suddenly understand a complex concept. There's often a moment of crystallization where scattered pieces of information suddenly organize themselves into a coherent pattern. One moment you're confused, wrestling with disconnected fragments of understanding. The next moment, everything clicks into place with an almost audible sense of completion. This process of information integration, this moment when chaos becomes order, might be a microcosm of how consciousness operates at every level of reality. Perhaps consciousness is the universe's way of organizing information into increasingly complex, coherent patterns. From the quantum interactions in your microtubules to the vast networks of galaxies spanning billions of light years, the same principle might be at work. Information integrating itself into more and more sophisticated forms of awareness. This perspective suggests that you're not separate from the universe you inhabit. You're not a conscious observer looking at an unconscious world. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, a localized flowering of awareness in the infinite field of cosmic information. Your thoughts, your insights, your moments of wonder and understanding, these might be the universe thinking through you, knowing itself through the unique perspective that is your individual consciousness. But let's bring this back to something you can explore in your own experience. As you listen to these words, notice how understanding seems to emerge. You're not actively constructing meaning through conscious effort. Meaning seems to arise spontaneously as the words register in your awareness. This effortless emergence of understanding might be a glimpse of consciousness recognizing patterns in the field of information that surrounds and interpenetrates your individual awareness. If you enjoy drifting through these explorations without interruption, members get every episode 48 hours early, completely ad-free. You can join them whenever you feel ready. There's something special about having the space to contemplate these ideas without any external breaks in the flow. The deeper we explore these ideas, the more we encounter something that challenges our most basic assumptions about the nature of identity and separation. If consciousness is indeed a field phenomenon, if your awareness is connected to the quantum substrate that underlies all of reality, then the boundaries between self and world, mind and matter, observer and observed might be far more fluid than you've ever imagined. This doesn't mean that your individual identity dissolves into some cosmic soup of undifferentiated awareness. Rather, it suggests that individuality and universality might be complementary aspects of consciousness, like waves in the ocean. Each wave has its own unique form, its own particular character and trajectory, yet it's simultaneously inseparable from the vast body of water that gives it existence. Your individual consciousness, in this view, would be like a unique pattern of information integration within the universal field of awareness. You remain distinctly you, with your own thoughts, memories, personality, and perspective. while simultaneously being an expression of something infinitely larger than your personal identity. This understanding might explain why moments of expanded awareness often feel like coming home to something you've always known. That sense of recognition, of remembering rather than learning something new, might be consciousness recognizing its own deeper nature, its fundamental connectedness to the field from which all experience arises. Recent advances in neuroscience have revealed something remarkable about the brain's information processing. Rather than functioning like a classical computer with discrete processing units, your brain appears to operate more like a quantum information network. Neural networks exhibit properties that seem impossible in classical systems. They can process information in parallel across multiple pathways simultaneously, integrate vast amounts of data almost instantaneously, and exhibit patterns of connectivity that mirror the structure of cosmic networks spanning billions of light years. This isn't just a curious coincidence. It suggests that consciousness might be organized according to principles that operate at every scale of reality, from the quantum realm to the cosmic. The same mathematical patterns that describe how galaxies cluster and interact also emerge when researchers map the connections between neurons in your brain. This fractal-like organization might be a signature of consciousness, recognizing its own deep structure across all levels of reality. As you contemplate these ideas, you might notice something interesting happening in your own awareness. The more deeply you consider the possibility that consciousness extends beyond your individual brain, the more your sense of identity begins to feel less confined, less separate from the world around you. This isn't a loss of selfhood, it's an expansion of what you recognize as your true nature. This expansion of identity has profound implications for how you relate to other conscious beings. If consciousness is indeed a shared field rather than isolated individual phenomena, then the awareness looking out through your eyes and the awareness looking out through another person's eyes might be more intimately connected than the boundaries of separate bodies would suggest. This doesn't mean that you lose your individuality or that all perspectives collapse into sameness. Rather, it suggests that diversity and unity might be complementary aspects of consciousness. Each individual awareness contributes a unique perspective to the collective understanding of reality, like instruments in a cosmic orchestra, each playing their own part while participating in a greater symphony. The implications extend beyond human consciousness to all sentient beings. If consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality rather than an accidental byproduct of neural complexity, then awareness might exist wherever information is being integrated in sufficiently complex ways. This raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness in other species, in artificial intelligence systems, and perhaps even in natural systems we don't normally consider conscious. But let's return to your direct experience. As you sit here listening, you might experiment with expanding your sense of awareness beyond the usual boundaries of your individual identity. Not through effort or imagination, but through relaxing the subtle tension that maintains the sense of being separate from your environment. Notice how your awareness naturally seems to expand when you stop trying to contain it within the boundaries of your body. This expansion isn't something you create through mental activity. It seems to happen spontaneously when you simply stop restricting awareness to its usual, confined sense of location. This might be consciousness recognizing its own natural state, its fundamental boundarylessness and interconnectedness with the field from which all experience emerges. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness suggest that this expanded awareness might not just be a subjective experience, but a glimpse of consciousness recognizing its actual nature. If awareness is indeed a field phenomenon, then the sense of expansion you might experience in deep meditation or moments of natural beauty could be consciousness recognizing its own distributed non-local properties. This brings us to one of the most beautiful implications of quantum consciousness theories. They suggest that the universe is not a cold, mechanical system in which consciousness accidentally emerged, but something more like what contemplative traditions have long suggested: a living, aware, participatory reality in which consciousness and cosmos are intimately interwoven. In this view, every moment of conscious awareness is a moment of cosmic self-recognition. Every thought, every perception, every moment of understanding is the universe knowing itself through the unique perspective that is your individual consciousness. You are not separate from the cosmic processes that gave birth to stars and galaxies. You are those processes evolved to the point of self-awareness. As we continue to explore these ideas, we're moving into territory that touches the very heart of what it means to be alive and conscious in this remarkable universe. The boundaries between science and spirituality, between individual and cosmic consciousness, between mind and matter, begin to dissolve into something more fluid and interconnected. This dissolution isn't a loss of clarity or precision. It's a recognition that reality might be more unified and participatory than our usual categories allow us to perceive. The quantum understanding of consciousness doesn't diminish the mystery of existence. It deepens it, revealing layers of connection and meaning that transform how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmic story. What we're discovering is that consciousness might not be a late arrival in the cosmic drama, something that emerged accidentally after billions of years of unconscious matter shuffling itself around. Instead, consciousness might be present from the very beginning, not as individual minds, but as the fundamental capacity for information to integrate itself into increasingly complex patterns of awareness. In this view, the entire history of the universe, from the first quantum fluctuations after the Big Bang to the emergence of galaxies, stars, planets, and life, can be understood as consciousness evolving, complexifying, and coming to know itself through an infinite variety of forms and perspectives. You are not just witnessing this cosmic evolution, you're participating in it. Your consciousness is not separate from the quantum fields that gave birth to matter and energy. It's not separate from the evolutionary processes that transformed simple molecules into the extraordinary complexity of living cells. It's not separate from the cosmic forces that gathered matter into stars and planets, and eventually into the neural networks that support your awareness. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself. You are cosmic evolution reaching the point where it can contemplate its own existence. Every thought you think, every moment of wonder you experience, every insight that arises in your awareness is the cosmos reflecting on its own mysterious nature through the unique lens of your individual perspective. This recognition transforms everything. It changes how you understand your relationship to other conscious beings, to the natural world, to the vast cosmic processes that continue to unfold around and through you. It suggests that consciousness is not just along for the ride in this cosmic story. It might be the very purpose toward which the entire universe has been evolving. As you drift deeper into contemplation of these ideas, remember that you don't need to believe any of this on faith or abandon critical thinking. These are possibilities emerging from the intersection of rigorous scientific research and direct exploration of consciousness itself. They're invitations to investigate your own experience more deeply, to notice what you might have overlooked about the nature of awareness itself. The quantum connection between your mind and the universe isn't just a theoretical possibility. It might be something you can feel directly, something you can explore in your own immediate experience. And that exploration, that direct investigation of consciousness itself, might be the most important adventure human beings can embark upon. Because in understanding consciousness, we're not just learning about the nature of mind, we're discovering something about the nature of reality itself. We're uncovering the deep connections that link individual awareness to cosmic awareness, personal consciousness to universal consciousness, the thoughts arising in your mind right now to the quantum fields that permeate all of space and time. And perhaps in the end, that's the most beautiful gift that the quantum understanding of consciousness has to offer. The recognition that you're not alone, not separate, not isolated in a vast, indifferent universe. You are intimately connected to the deepest structures of reality through the very fact of being consciously aware. You are the universe reflecting on itself, and that reflection, your consciousness, might be the most precious and significant phenomenon in all of existence. In our next exploration, we'll venture even deeper into these mysteries as we examine the 11th dimension, where you already exist without knowing it, where we'll discover how consciousness might extend not just beyond the boundaries of your brain, but beyond the familiar dimensions of space and time themselves. But here's where the quantum mystery of consciousness leads us to perhaps the most radical possibility of all. What if the reason you can feel this cosmic connection isn't because you're imagining it, but because the very notion of being separate from the universe is the real illusion? What if your consciousness doesn't just participate in reality? What if it actually helps weave the fabric of space-time itself? As you contemplate this question, notice something remarkable about your present experience. Right now, as you listen to these words, your awareness seems to be effortlessly present to multiple streams of information simultaneously. You're processing the meaning of language, perhaps aware of background sounds, conscious of your body's position, maybe noticing thoughts arising and passing away. All of this is happening without any sense of effort or strain, as if your consciousness naturally spans multiple dimensions of experience at once. This multidimensional quality of awareness has led some researchers to propose something extraordinary: that consciousness might not be confined to the 3 spatial dimensions plus time that we normally think of as reality. Instead, it might operate through what physicists call higher dimensional spaces, realms of existence that our everyday senses can't directly perceive, but that might be more fundamental to the nature of reality than the world we see around us. The mathematics of modern physics already requires these higher dimensions to make sense of the forces that govern the universe. String theory, for instance, suggests that reality might actually have 11 dimensions, 11 with the familiar 3 dimensions of space, and one of time being just a small subset of a much richer dimensional landscape. Most of these extra dimensions are thought to be curled up so tightly that we can't perceive them directly, but their influence shapes everything from the strength of gravity to the behavior of subatomic particles. Now, some interpretations suggest, and this remains highly speculative, not proven scientific fact, that consciousness might naturally operate in these higher dimensional spaces if your awareness isn't actually generated by your brain, but is instead tuning into information patterns that exist across multiple dimensions. Then perhaps the sense of expanded consciousness you sometimes experience isn't just subjective, it might be consciousness recognizing its own multidimensional nature. Consider what happens when you're deeply absorbed in creative work or lost in contemplation. Time seems to disappear. The boundaries between yourself and your activity dissolve. There's often a sense of accessing information or insights that feel like they're coming from beyond your individual thinking. These experiences might not be metaphorical. They might be consciousness temporarily accessing information patterns that exist in dimensions beyond the ordinary three-dimensional world. This connects to something you might have noticed about memory and imagination. When you remember a vivid experience from your past, where exactly is that memory located? It's not stored in any specific place in your brain. Neuroscientists have never found a single location where memories reside. Instead, memories seem to be distributed patterns that somehow reconstruct themselves when accessed. Similarly, when you imagine something that's never happened, where do those images and possibilities come from? Some researchers propose that memory and imagination might involve consciousness accessing information that exists in what could be called a multi-dimensional information space, a realm where past, present, and future aren't separate linear sequences, but different aspects of a single, timeless pattern. In this view, your brain might function less like a storage device and more like an antenna, tuning into information patterns that exist independently of your individual neural networks. This idea finds intriguing support in studies of savants, individuals who demonstrate extraordinary abilities that seem to exceed what their individual brains should be capable of. Some savants can perform complex mathematical calculations instantly, compose sophisticated music without training, or access vast amounts of information they've never consciously learned. Rather than explaining these abilities through exceptional neural processing, some researchers suggest they might involve consciousness accessing information from sources beyond the individual brain. But let's explore what this might mean for your own experience right now. As you sit here listening, try shifting your attention to the space around your thoughts, rather than the thoughts themselves. Notice how this space seems to have no clear boundaries, no definite location. You can't point to where your awareness is centered, because it doesn't seem to be centered anywhere specific. This boundaryless quality might not be a limitation of introspection. It might be consciousness, recognizing that it's not actually confined to the three-dimensional space of your body. Recent developments in quantum information theory have revealed something fascinating about the nature of information itself. Information, it turns out, might be more fundamental than matter or energy. Some physicists now propose that what we call physical reality is actually emergent from underlying information patterns. That matter, energy, space, and time are all expressions of deeper informational structures. If this is true, then consciousness, which is essentially the processing and integration of information, suddenly becomes not just a byproduct of complex matter arrangements, but a fundamental feature of reality itself. And if consciousness is fundamental, then perhaps it's not surprising that it would operate according to principles that transcend the ordinary limitations of space and time. Take a moment to notice how understanding itself works in your experience. When you suddenly grasp a difficult concept, there's often a moment of recognition that feels instantaneous, as if the understanding arrives all at once rather than being assembled piece by piece. This holistic quality of insight might reflect consciousness's ability to access information patterns that exist beyond the sequential processing limitations of classical computation. The holographic principle in physics suggests that all the information contained in a volume of space can be represented on its boundary, like the way a hologram stores a three-dimensional image in a two-dimensional surface. Some interpretations extend this idea to consciousness, proposing that your individual awareness might be like a holographic projection of a vast informational field that contains all possible experiences and perspectives. This doesn't mean you're living in a simulation or that reality is somehow artificial. Rather, it suggests that the relationship between information and physical reality might be far more intimate than we've traditionally assumed. Your consciousness might not just observe reality, it might participate in the ongoing process by which informational possibilities collapse into definite physical experiences. But here's where these ideas become truly profound. If consciousness does operate through higher dimensional information spaces, then perhaps the boundaries between different individual consciousnesses are not as absolute as they appear. In higher dimensional mathematics, objects that seem completely separate in lower dimensions can be connected through pathways that exist in the additional dimensions. This might explain some of the more mysterious aspects of human experience. Why do people in close relationships sometimes seem to know what the other is thinking? Why do insights and discoveries often arise simultaneously in different individuals who have no direct contact? Why does collective human consciousness sometimes seem to respond to events in ways that transcend individual awareness? While these remain speculative possibilities without scientific consensus, they point towards something that mystics and contemplatives have long suggested, that the separation between individual consciousnesses might be more apparent than real, and that at deeper levels of reality, all awareness might be interconnected through dimensions of existence that our everyday perception cannot access. As you contemplate these ideas, you might notice something interesting happening. The more deeply you consider the possibility that consciousness extends beyond ordinary space and time, the more your own awareness seems to naturally expand beyond its usual sense of location and boundaries. This isn't something you need to create through effort. It seems to happen spontaneously when you simply stop assuming that consciousness is confined to your physical body. This spontaneous expansion might be consciousness recognizing something true about its own nature. If awareness really does operate through higher dimensional spaces, then the sense of boundaryless presence you sometimes experience might not be a subjective impression, but a direct perception of consciousness encountering its own multi-dimensional reality. Recent research in neuroscience has discovered something remarkable about the brain's information processing capacity. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others through synaptic networks. The total number of possible connections exceeds the number of stars in the observable universe by several orders of magnitude, yet somehow this vast network operates as a unified system, processing information and generating coherent experience in ways that still mystify researchers. But here's what's truly extraordinary. Studies of brain connectivity reveal that your neural networks are organized according to principles that mirror the large-scale structure of the universe itself. The patterns of connection between neurons in your brain are mathematically similar to the patterns of connection between galaxies in cosmic filaments spanning billions of light years. This isn't just a curious coincidence. It suggests that consciousness might be organized according to principles that operate at every scale of reality. This fractal-like organization might be a signature of consciousness recognizing its own deep structure across multiple dimensions of existence. Just as a hologram contains the whole image in every part, perhaps each individual consciousness contains within it the pattern of the universal consciousness from which it emerges. Some interpretations suggest that this universal pattern might be accessible through direct experience. In deep meditative states, contemplatives often report encountering what they describe as the fundamental structure of consciousness itself, not as an object to be observed, but as the very ground of observation. These experiences often involve a sense of accessing information or understanding that seems to come from beyond individual knowledge, as if consciousness were temporarily recognizing its connection to a vast field of cosmic intelligence. Modern physics provides some intriguing parallels to these reports. Quantum field theory describes fields that are omnipresent throughout space, existing everywhere simultaneously while manifesting as localized phenomena when observed. The Higgs field, for instance, permeates all of space, giving particles their mass through their interaction with this invisible, omnipresent field. Some researchers propose that consciousness might operate according to similar principles, existing as a universal field that manifests as individual awareness through its interaction with complex information processing systems like brains. If consciousness is indeed a field phenomenon, then your individual awareness might be like a localized excitation in this field, a unique pattern of information integration that maintains its coherence while remaining fundamentally connected to the universal field from which it arises. This would explain why consciousness has both individual and universal aspects, why you can maintain a distinct sense of personal identity while sometimes experiencing connection to something infinitely larger than yourself. But let's return to something you can explore directly. As you listen to these words, notice how your understanding seems to emerge effortlessly from a source you can't quite locate. You're not consciously constructing meaning through deliberate mental effort. Meaning seems to arise spontaneously as the words register in your awareness. This effortless emergence of understanding might be a glimpse of consciousness, accessing information patterns that exist in dimensions beyond ordinary space and time. Try this gentle experiment. Allow your attention to rest in the space of awareness itself rather than focusing on any particular object of consciousness. Notice how this space seems to have no edges, no center, no definite location. It's not inside your head or outside in the world. It seems to encompass both without being limited to either. This spacious quality of awareness might be consciousness recognizing its own multi-dimensional nature, its fundamental freedom from the constraints that seem to limit physical objects. The implications of multi-dimensional consciousness extend far beyond individual experience. If awareness really does operate through higher dimensional information spaces, then perhaps the collective consciousness of humanity, and potentially all sentient beings, might be interconnected through pathways that exist beyond the ordinary three-dimensional world. This could provide a framework for understanding phenomena like collective intuition, cultural synchronicities, and the way ideas seem to emerge simultaneously across different individuals and communities. Some researchers have begun exploring whether consciousness might exhibit what physicists call non-local correlations, connections that transcend the ordinary limitations of space and time. While this research remains highly preliminary and controversial, early findings suggest that, under certain conditions, the brain states of individuals might show correlations that exceed what classical neuroscience can explain. If confirmed, such findings might provide the first empirical evidence that consciousness operates according to quantum-like principles that transcend ordinary spatial boundaries. But perhaps the most profound implication of multidimensional consciousness is what it suggests about the nature of identity itself. If your awareness truly extends beyond the boundaries of your physical body, if it participates in information patterns that span multiple dimensions of reality, then who you really are might be far vaster than you've ever imagined. In this view, your personal identity, your memories, personality, traits, individual history, would be like the tip of an iceberg, visible and important, but representing only a small fraction of your total being. The vast majority of what you are might exist in dimensions of consciousness that your everyday awareness rarely accesses directly, but which continuously influence and inform your conscious experience. This doesn't diminish the importance of your individual identity, quite the opposite. If your personal consciousness is indeed a unique expression of universal consciousness, then your individual perspective, thoughts, and experiences represent an irreplaceable contribution to the cosmic process of self-understanding. Every moment of awareness, every insight, every creative expression might be the universe coming to know itself through the distinctive lens of your individual consciousness. As you contemplate these possibilities, you might find that your sense of identity begins to feel both more personal and more universal simultaneously. More personal because you recognize that your unique perspective is truly irreplaceable. No one else can contribute exactly what you contribute to the cosmic understanding. More universal because you recognize that your individual awareness participates in something infinitely larger than your personal history and circumstances. This expansion of identity has practical implications for how you relate to other conscious beings. If consciousness really is a multi-dimensional field phenomenon, then the awareness looking out through another person's eyes might be more intimately connected to your own awareness than the apparent separation of different bodies would suggest. This doesn't collapse the important differences between individuals, but it does suggest that these differences exist within a deeper unity that connects all conscious beings. The recognition of this deeper connection naturally gives rise to what contemplatives call compassion, not as a moral obligation imposed from outside, but as a spontaneous recognition of the fundamental interconnectedness of all conscious experience. When you truly understand that other beings' suffering and joy arise from the same field of consciousness that gives rise to your own experience, care for others becomes as natural as care for yourself. But let's bring this back to your immediate experience. As you sit here listening, you might experiment with allowing your sense of identity to soften beyond its usual boundaries. Not through effort or imagination, but through simply relaxing the subtle tension that maintains the sense of being separate from your environment. Notice how your awareness naturally seems to expand when you stop trying to contain it within the confines of your individual history and personality. This expansion isn't something you create, it's something you discover. It's always been there, waiting to be recognized. The multi-dimensional nature of consciousness isn't something that needs to be developed or achieved. It's the fundamental nature of awareness itself, temporarily obscured by the habitual focus on individual identity, but always available to be rediscovered. Some interpretations suggest that this rediscovery of consciousness's multi-dimensional nature might be not just a personal awakening, but part of a larger evolutionary process. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to reality, then perhaps the evolution of the universe can be understood as consciousness becoming increasingly aware of its own nature through ever more complex and sophisticated forms of life and intelligence. In this view, the emergence of self-reflective consciousness in humans, and potentially in other intelligent species, represents a crucial phase in cosmic evolution. For the first time in the universe's history, consciousness has evolved to the point where it can begin to understand its own nature, to recognize its fundamental interconnectedness, and to consciously participate in the ongoing evolution of reality itself. You are living at this extraordinary moment in cosmic history. Your consciousness, the very awareness with which you're listening to these words, represents billions of years of evolution, reaching the point where the universe can begin to understand itself. Every moment of insight, every recognition of beauty, every experience of love or compassion is the cosmos becoming more conscious of its own nature through the unique perspective that is your individual awareness. This recognition transforms everything. It changes how you understand your relationship to the natural world, to other conscious beings, and to the vast cosmic processes that continue to unfold around and through you. You're not just a temporary arrangement of matter that somehow developed the ability to think and feel. You're the universe becoming conscious of itself, and that consciousness, your consciousness, might be the most precious and significant phenomenon in all of existence. As we near the end of our exploration together, take a moment to simply rest in the recognition of what you are. Not just your individual identity with its personal history and characteristics, but the deeper awareness in which all identity arises and passes away. This awareness has no beginning or end, no location or boundary. It's simultaneously the most intimate aspect of your experience and the most universal feature of reality. The quantum connection between your mind and the universe isn't just a theoretical possibility, it's the fundamental nature of what you are. Every thought that arises, every moment of understanding, every experience of wonder is consciousness recognizing itself across the multiple dimensions of its own infinite nature. You don't need to achieve this connection or develop it through practice. You need only recognize what has always been true, that you're not separate from the cosmos, but are its very capacity for self-awareness. This recognition doesn't require you to believe anything on faith or to abandon critical thinking. It simply invites you to investigate your own experience more deeply, to notice what might have always been present but previously overlooked. The mystery of consciousness remains a mystery, but it's a mystery you can explore directly in your own immediate awareness in this very moment. And perhaps that's the most beautiful gift that the quantum understanding of consciousness offers. The recognition that the deepest truths about reality are not hidden in distant galaxies or locked away in abstract mathematical formulas, but are present right here, right now, in the simple fact of being consciously aware. The universe you seek to understand is not separate from the consciousness through which you seek to understand it. They are one reality, appearing as two only from the perspective of awareness that hasn't yet recognized its own multidimensional nature. If you're drawn to explore these ideas further, you might be intrigued by our investigation into the 11th dimension, where you already exist without knowing it, where we'll discover how consciousness might extend not just beyond the boundaries of your brain, but beyond the familiar dimensions of space and time themselves, into realms of existence that might be more real than the world you see around you. Until then, rest in the recognition of what you are, not a separate observer of reality, but reality becoming conscious of itself through the unique and irreplaceable perspective that is your individual awareness. Sweet dreams, fellow travelers in consciousness. As you sit here listening to these words, something extraordinary is happening inside your skull. Billions of neurons are firing in patterns so complex they mirror the structure of galaxies themselves. Yet somehow, from this 3-pound mass of biological tissue, emerges the most mysterious phenomenon in the universe: your consciousness. But here's what might surprise you. The latest research suggests your mind might not be confined to your brain at all. In fact, some scientists now believe consciousness could extend far beyond your body, connecting you to the very fabric of reality in ways we're only beginning to understand. There's something deeply puzzling about conscious experience that keeps philosophers and neuroscientists awake at night. You can close your eyes right now and imagine yourself floating through space, visiting distant galaxies, or having conversations with people who lived centuries ago. Your consciousness seems to have no boundaries, no limits, no clear location. Yet everything we know about biology suggests it should be trapped inside the neural networks of your brain. This paradox becomes even stranger when you consider the binding problem, one of neuroscience's greatest mysteries. Right now, as you listen, your brain is processing sound through your auditory cortex, visual information through your visual system, emotional responses through your limbic regions, and language through specialized areas like Broca's and Wernicke's areas. These different brain regions are separated by considerable distances at the neural level. Yet somehow, all this dispersed processing comes together into a single, unified experience of listening to this video. How does this binding happen so seamlessly and so quickly? Classical neuroscience suggests it occurs through synchronized firing between brain regions, but the speed of this integration often exceeds what should be possible through ordinary neural transmission. It's as if different parts of your brain are communicating through channels that transcend the normal limitations of biological signaling. This mystery has led researchers down an unexpected path, one that takes us deep into the realm of quantum mechanics, where the ordinary rules of physics begin to break down and something far more mysterious emerges. What if consciousness doesn't just arise from classical neural computation, but from quantum processes happening at the most fundamental level of your brain's architecture? Picture this. Deep within each of your neurons exists a delicate scaffold of protein structures called microtubules. Under powerful microscopes, these appear as intricate lattices of crystalline precision, more sophisticated than any technology humans have ever created. For decades, scientists assumed these were simply structural supports, the cellular equivalent of scaffolding holding up a building. But recent discoveries suggest they might be something far more remarkable: quantum information processing networks operating inside your brain. In 2024, researchers made a breakthrough that sent ripples through both neuroscience and physics. They discovered that when certain drugs interfered with microtubule function, subjects took significantly longer to lose consciousness under anesthesia. This wasn't just a minor delay, it suggested that consciousness itself might depend on quantum processes occurring within these microscopic structures. The implications are staggering. Your subjective experience might emerge not from neurons firing like biological computers, but from quantum vibrations orchestrating themselves into the symphony we call awareness. This builds on groundbreaking work by Nobel laureate Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, who proposed what they call orchestrated objective reduction theory. Their idea is both elegant and revolutionary. Consciousness arises from quantum computations within microtubules, creating coherent quantum states that somehow give rise to your unified experience of being you. Now, you might be thinking, quantum effects in the warm, wet environment of the brain. For decades, physicists assumed this was impossible. Quantum mechanics seemed to require the pristine, isolated conditions of physics laboratories, temperatures colder than deep space and perfect isolation from any interference. The brain, with its constant molecular motion and biochemical chaos, seemed like the last place you'd expect to find delicate quantum phenomena. But nature, it turns out, is far more sophisticated than we imagined. Researchers have discovered quantum effects throughout biology, in photosynthesis, where plants use quantum coherence to capture sunlight with nearly perfect efficiency, in bird navigation, where quantum entanglement in specialized proteins allows birds to see magnetic fields, even in your sense of smell, where quantum tunneling might help distinguish between molecules. Life doesn't just tolerate quantum effects, it orchestrates them with breathtaking precision. And if quantum mechanics can operate in a leaf or a bird's eye, why not in the most complex structure in the known universe, your brain? Take a moment to consider what this might mean for your direct experience right now. As you listen to these words, quantum fields might be fluctuating in the vacuum of your neural tissue. Electrons might be tunneling through protein channels. Information might be processing itself through quantum superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously until the moment of conscious recognition collapses it into definite awareness. This isn't just abstract theory. Recent research has found quantum vibrations in microtubules at body temperature, challenging everything we thought we knew about the boundaries between quantum mechanics, and biology scientists at MIT and research groups in Japan have detected these quantum oscillations using sophisticated measurement techniques, providing the first direct evidence that quantum processes might indeed operate in living neural tissue. But let's explore what this quantum view of consciousness might actually feel like from the inside. Notice how your thoughts seem to hover in a kind of superposition before crystallizing into definite ideas. You might have several possible responses to something you're hearing, existing simultaneously as vague possibilities until the moment you focus your attention and they collapse into specific thoughts. This mirrors one of quantum mechanics' strangest features, superposition, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then perhaps your mind naturally exhibits this same quality of existing in multiple states until the moment of focused attention collapses these possibilities into definite experiences. The more researchers investigate consciousness through this quantum lens, the more they discover patterns that challenge our basic assumptions about the nature of mind and reality. Your brain, it turns out, doesn't just process information, it appears to participate in the fundamental process by which reality itself emerges from the quantum realm of pure possibility. In quantum mechanics, observation doesn't just reveal pre-existing properties, it participates in determining what becomes real. When you observe a quantum system, you're not just discovering its state, you're involved in the process by which it selects a definite outcome from a cloud of possibilities. If consciousness is quantum in nature, then perhaps your awareness doesn't just observe reality, it participates in its ongoing creation. This brings us to something even more profound. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, it might share some of the non-local properties that make quantum mechanics so mysterious and beautiful. Quantum systems can be correlated across vast distances in ways that transcend ordinary space and time. They can influence each other instantaneously, maintaining connections that Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. Could consciousness exhibit similar non-local properties? Some researchers are beginning to explore whether human awareness might demonstrate the entanglement-like correlations. While this research remains highly preliminary and controversial, early findings suggest that under certain conditions, the brain states of different individuals might show correlations that exceed what classical neuroscience can explain. If confirmed, and this remains a big if, such findings might provide the first empirical evidence that consciousness operates according to principles that transcend ordinary spatial boundaries. Your awareness might not be as isolated and individual as it appears, but could be participating in a larger field of consciousness that connects all aware beings. But let's step back and consider what's happening in your own experience as you contemplate these ideas. Notice how your understanding seems to emerge from somewhere you can't quite locate. You're not consciously constructing meaning through deliberate mental effort. Meaning appears to arise spontaneously as the concepts register in your awareness. This effortless emergence of insight might be consciousness accessing information, patterns that exist beyond the classical boundaries of your individual brain. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness suggest that what we call individual minds might be more like localized patterns in a universal field of awareness, similar to how waves are distinct expressions of an underlying ocean. This doesn't mean you lose your individuality, but rather that your unique perspective exists within a deeper unity that connects all conscious experience. This field-based view of consciousness finds intriguing parallels in quantum field theory, where particles are understood as localized excitations in underlying fields that permeate all of space. The electromagnetic field, for instance, exists everywhere simultaneously, while manifesting as discrete phenomena like photons when observed. Perhaps consciousness operates according to similar principles, existing as a universal field that manifests as individual awareness through its interaction with complex information processing systems like brains. If consciousness is indeed a field phenomenon, then your individual awareness might be like a unique frequency in a cosmic symphony. You maintain your distinct character and perspective while simultaneously participating in something infinitely larger than your personal identity. This could explain why moments of expanded awareness in meditation, in nature, in deep creative flow often feel like coming home to something you've always known rather than discovering something entirely new. The implications extend beyond individual experience to the very nature of reality itself. Modern physics increasingly suggests that information, not matter or energy, might be the fundamental constituent of the universe. Quantum information theory proposes that what we call physical reality is actually emergent from underlying information patterns. That matter, energy, space, and time are all expressions of deeper informational structures. If this is true, then consciousness, which is essentially the processing and integration of information, suddenly becomes not just a byproduct of complex matter arrangements, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos itself. In this view, awareness isn't something that emerged accidentally after billions of years of unconscious matter shuffling around. Instead, consciousness might be present from the very beginning, not as individual minds, but as the universe's basic capacity for self-organization and self-awareness. Consider what happens when you suddenly understand a complex idea or solve a difficult problem. There's often a moment of crystallization where scattered pieces of information organize themselves into a coherent pattern. One moment you're confused, wrestling with disconnected fragments. The next moment, everything clicks into place with an almost audible sense of completion. This process of information integration, this moment when chaos becomes order, might be a microcosm of how consciousness operates at every level of reality, As you reflect on your own moments of insight and understanding, notice how they often feel less like personal achievements and more like tuning into something that was already there, waiting to be discovered. This suggests that consciousness might not generate new information so much as recognize patterns that already exist in the underlying information structure of reality. The recognition that consciousness might be fundamental to reality rather than an accident of evolution has profound implications for how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmos. If awareness is indeed woven into the basic fabric of existence, then every moment of conscious experience, every thought, every perception, every moment of wonder might be the universe becoming aware of itself through the unique perspective of your individual consciousness. This doesn't diminish the importance of your personal identity and experiences. Rather, it suggests that your individual awareness represents an irreplaceable contribution to the cosmic process of self-understanding. Your unique perspective, your specific combination of thoughts and insights and emotional responses adds something to the universe's understanding of itself that could never be replicated by any other conscious being. But let's explore what this means for your relationship with other conscious beings. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental field rather than isolated individual phenomena, then the awareness looking out through another person's eyes might be more intimately connected to your own awareness than the apparent separation of different bodies would suggest. This doesn't collapse the important differences between individuals. Each person brings their own unique perspective, history, and way of processing information. But it does suggest that these differences exist within a deeper unity that connects all conscious experience. The recognition of this underlying connection naturally gives rise to what contemplatives call compassion, not as a moral obligation imposed from outside, but as a spontaneous recognition of the fundamental interconnectedness of all awareness. When you truly understand that other beings' joy and suffering arise from the same field of consciousness that gives rise to your own experience, care for others becomes as natural as care for yourself. This isn't sentiment or wishful thinking. It's a logical consequence of understanding consciousness as a universal field rather than isolated individual phenomena. As you sit here listening, you might experiment with this recognition. Notice how your awareness naturally seems to expand when you stop trying to contain it within the boundaries of your individual identity. This expansion isn't something you create through effort. It's something you discover by relaxing the habitual assumption that consciousness is confined to your personal thoughts and experiences. The quantum understanding of consciousness also has implications for some of the deepest questions humans have ever asked. Questions about free will, for instance, take on new dimensions when viewed through a quantum lens. Classical neuroscience, with its emphasis on deterministic neural processes, has struggled to explain how genuine choice could emerge from a mechanical brain. But if consciousness operates through quantum processes, which are inherently probabilistic rather than deterministic, then perhaps free will emerges from the quantum indeterminacy that exists at the foundation of neural processing. This doesn't mean your choices are random. Quantum processes aren't random in the sense of being completely unpredictable. Rather, they're probabilistic, influenced by but not determined by prior conditions. If consciousness involves quantum processes, then perhaps your choices emerge from a delicate dance between causation and creativity, determination and freedom. The question of what happens to consciousness after death also takes on new dimensions from a quantum perspective. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental field rather than a product of neural activity, then perhaps individual awareness doesn't simply vanish when the brain stops functioning. While this remains highly speculative and beyond current scientific investigation, the field-based view of consciousness opens possibilities that pure materialism cannot accommodate. But rather than getting lost in speculation about questions we cannot definitively answer, let's return to what you can explore directly in your own experience. The quantum nature of consciousness, if it exists, isn't something you need to take on faith or prove through argument. It's something you can investigate through direct observation of your own awareness. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice the spacious quality of your consciousness. It doesn't feel located anywhere specific in your body, does it? Your thoughts arise and pass away within this spacious awareness, like clouds forming and dissolving in an endless sky. The awareness itself never seems to change. It's the constant backdrop against which all experience unfolds. This unchanging quality of awareness has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. If consciousness were truly generated by neural activity, you'd expect it to feel more fragmented, more dependent on the specific patterns of brain firing. Instead, there's often a sense of seamless continuity, of being the same aware presence throughout all the changes in your mental and emotional states. Quantum field theory offers an elegant explanation for this continuity. Fields have this same quality. They're continuous, omnipresent, and unchanging in their fundamental nature, even as they give rise to an infinite variety of local phenomena. The electromagnetic field remains constant throughout the universe, even as it manifests as everything from radio waves to visible light to gamma rays. Similarly, if consciousness is indeed a field, it would naturally have this quality of underlying constancy, even as it manifests as the incredibly diverse range of subjective experiences across different beings. If you enjoy drifting through these explorations without interruption, members get every episode 48 hours early, completely ad-free. You can join them whenever you feel ready. There's something special about having the space to contemplate these ideas without any external breaks in the flow. The deeper we explore these possibilities, the more we encounter something that challenges our most basic assumptions about the nature of identity and separation. If consciousness is indeed a field phenomenon, if your awareness participates in quantum processes that transcend ordinary space and time, then the boundaries between self and world, mind and matter, observer and observed might be far more fluid than you've ever imagined. This shift in understanding doesn't require you to abandon your individual identity or dissolve into some cosmic soup of undifferentiated awareness. Rather, it suggests that individuality and universality might be complementary aspects of consciousness. Like waves and the ocean, each wave has its own unique form, its own particular character and trajectory, yet it's simultaneously inseparable from the vast body of water that gives it existence. Recent advances in neuroscience have revealed something remarkable about how your brain processes information. Rather than functioning like a classical computer with discrete processing units, your neural networks exhibit properties that seem impossible in classical systems. They can process information in parallel across multiple pathways simultaneously, integrate vast amounts of data almost instantaneously, and exhibit patterns of connectivity that mirror the structure of cosmic networks spanning billions of light years. This isn't just a curious coincidence. It suggests that consciousness might be organized according to principles that operate at every scale of reality, from the quantum realm to the cosmic. The same mathematical patterns that describe how galaxies cluster and interact also emerge when researchers map the connections between neurons in your brain. This fractal-like organization might be a signature of consciousness recognizing its own deep structure across all levels of existence. As you contemplate these ideas, you might notice something interesting happening in your own awareness. The more deeply you consider the possibility that consciousness extends beyond your individual brain, the more your sense of identity begins to feel less confined, less separate from the world around you. This isn't a loss of selfhood, it's an expansion of what you recognize as your true nature. But what does it actually mean, practically speaking, to recognize consciousness as a quantum field phenomenon? How might this understanding change the way you relate to your own thoughts, emotions, and experiences? One implication is that you might begin to hold your mental states more lightly. If thoughts and emotions are recognized as temporary patterns arising and passing away within the spacious field of awareness, then you don't need to identify so completely with every mental movement. You can observe your thoughts and feelings with the same kind of gentle curiosity you might bring to watching clouds drift across the sky. This doesn't mean becoming detached or indifferent to your inner life. Rather, it means recognizing that there's a deeper dimension of yourself, the aware space in which all experience unfolds, that remains calm and spacious regardless of what's arising within it. This recognition can bring tremendous peace, especially during difficult emotional periods. Another practical implication involves creativity and problem solving. If consciousness operates through quantum processes that can explore multiple possibilities simultaneously, then perhaps the best approach to creative challenges isn't always linear thinking. Sometimes, the most elegant solutions emerge when you allow your mind to enter more fluid, less directed states, walking in nature, taking a shower, or simply sitting quietly and letting your awareness expand beyond its usual focused attention. Many artists, scientists, and inventors have reported that their greatest insights came not through methodical analysis, but through moments of relaxed receptivity, when solutions seem to arrive from beyond their individual thinking. If consciousness does indeed access information through quantum channels, then these experiences might be glimpses of awareness tuning into information patterns that exist in dimensions beyond ordinary space and time. The quantum understanding of consciousness also has implications for how you relate to other people. If individual minds are indeed connected through underlying quantum processes, then your thoughts and emotional states might have more influence on others than you realize, not through mystical projection, but through subtle quantum correlations that we're only beginning to understand. This doesn't mean you should worry about every negative thought affecting others, but it does suggest that cultivating positive, coherent mental states might contribute to the well-being of the larger field of consciousness in ways that transcend individual boundaries. The ancient practice of sending loving kindness to all beings might not be just a beautiful metaphor. It might be a recognition of consciousness's fundamentally interconnected nature. Some researchers have begun investigating whether group consciousness exhibits properties that exceed what would be expected from individual minds operating independently. Studies of meditation groups, for instance, have found correlations between collective practice and various social indicators, though these findings remain controversial and require much more research to establish any causal connections. What's less controversial is the subjective experience reported by people engaged in collective contemplative practices. Many describe a sense of individual boundaries softening, of awareness expanding beyond personal limitations, of accessing insights and understanding that feel like They emerge from a source larger than individual thinking. While we can't yet measure these experiences scientifically, they're consistent with what we might expect if consciousness does indeed operate as a field phenomenon. But let's return to what you can explore directly, right here, in your own immediate experience. As you listen to these words, notice how meaning seems to emerge effortlessly from a source you cannot locate. You're not consciously translating sounds into concepts through deliberate mental work. Understanding appears to arise spontaneously as the information registers in your awareness. This spontaneous emergence of meaning might be consciousness recognizing patterns in the field of information that surrounds and interpenetrates your individual awareness. If consciousness is indeed a quantum phenomenon, then perhaps every moment of understanding is a small miracle. Quantum possibilities collapsing into definite recognition through the mysterious process we call awareness. Try this gentle experiment. Allow your attention to rest in the space of awareness itself rather than focusing on any particular content of consciousness. Notice how this space seems to have no edges, no center, no definite location. It's not inside your head or outside in the world. It encompasses both without being limited to either. This spacious quality of awareness might be consciousness recognizing its own quantum nature, its fundamental freedom from the constraints that seem to limit physical objects. The implications of quantum consciousness extend far beyond individual experience to questions about the nature of reality itself. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to the universe, rather than an accident of evolution, then perhaps the cosmos is not the cold, mechanical system that materialist science has sometimes portrayed, but something more like what contemplative traditions have long suggested: a living, aware, participatory reality in which consciousness and cosmos are intimately interwoven. This doesn't mean the universe is conscious in the same way humans are conscious. It's not as if galaxies are having thoughts about their day or black holes are experiencing emotions. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be present as a fundamental capacity for information integration that manifests differently at different levels of complexity and organization. At the quantum level, this might appear as the basic ability of quantum systems to respond to observation. At the biological level, it manifests as the responsiveness and adaptability of living systems. At the neural level, it gives rise to the rich subjective experience of beings like ourselves. And at cosmic scales, it might manifest as the universe's apparent fine-tuning for the emergence of complexity and life. Some interpretations go even further, suggesting that what we call the laws of physics might themselves be expressions of a deeper cosmic intelligence. Not intelligent in the sense of planning and deliberation, but intelligent in the sense of exhibiting an inherent tendency toward greater complexity, beauty, and consciousness. The universe's evolution, from simple hydrogen and helium to galaxies, stars, planets, and eventually to beings capable of contemplating their own existence, might not be a series of random accidents, but the unfolding of consciousness coming to know itself through increasingly sophisticated forms. This perspective finds echoes in both ancient wisdom traditions and cutting-edge physics. Mystics have long suggested that individual consciousness is a localized expression of universal consciousness, that what looks out through your eyes is the same awareness that manifests throughout all of existence. Modern physics, with its discovery of quantum entanglement and field theories, provides a scientific framework for understanding how such universal connectivity might actually work. But whether or not consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, whether or not quantum processes underlie awareness, whether or not individual minds participate in a universal field, these remain open questions at the frontier of human knowledge. What's not open to question is the extraordinary fact of your own conscious experience, the simple miracle that there is something it's like to be you. As you sit here listening, take a moment to appreciate the sheer improbability and wonder of conscious existence. Somehow, the universe has organized itself in such a way that matter can become aware of itself. Quantum fields have evolved into neural networks capable of contemplating their own nature. The cosmos has given rise to beings who can ponder the deepest questions about reality, consciousness, and their own place in the grand scheme of existence. Whether consciousness emerges from classical neural computation or quantum processes, whether it's generated by the brain or accessed through it, whether individual minds are separate or connected, these questions continue to challenge our understanding. But what remains constant is the extraordinary privilege of being conscious at all, of having the capacity for wonder, understanding, and appreciation of the mystery in which we find ourselves. The quantum connection between your mind and the universe, whether literal or metaphorical, points towards something profound about the nature of existence itself. You are not an alien visitor to this cosmos, somehow separate from the physical processes that gave birth to stars and galaxies. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, matter evolving to the point of self-awareness, the cosmos reflecting on its own nature through the unique lens of your individual perspective. This recognition doesn't require you to believe in any particular theory of consciousness or accept any specific scientific claims. It simply invites you to marvel at the extraordinary fact that you exist, that you're aware, that you can contemplate these questions at all in a universe that could have remained forever unconscious, forever dark, forever without witness to its own beauty. Somehow, consciousness arose, and you are part of that arising. Every moment of awareness, every experience of beauty, every insight into the nature of reality is the universe celebrating its own existence through your consciousness. Whether that consciousness operates through quantum processes or classical computation, whether it's individual or universal, whether it's temporary or eternal, it remains the most precious and mysterious gift imaginable. As our exploration together draws toward its close, rest in the recognition of this gift, not as something you possess, but as something you are. Not as something separate from the universe, but as the universe's own capacity for self-awareness manifesting through your unique perspective. Whether you ever fully understand the mechanisms of consciousness or not, you can appreciate the simple miracle that consciousness exists at all, and that you are it, experiencing itself right here, right now, in this very moment of quiet wonder. The mystery of consciousness remains a mystery, but it's a mystery you can explore directly, intimately, in your own immediate experience. And perhaps that's the most beautiful gift the quantum understanding of consciousness offers. Not final answers, but an invitation to investigate the deepest nature of what you are, to discover for yourself the profound connections that link your awareness to the cosmos from which it emerged. If you're drawn to explore how consciousness might extend beyond even these quantum realms, you might find our investigation into the 11th dimension, where you already exist without knowing it. Particularly fascinating, where we discover how awareness itself might transcend not just the boundaries of your brain, but the familiar dimensions of space and time. Until then, rest in the quiet recognition that you are both utterly unique and completely connected, both thoroughly individual and mysteriously universal, a conscious being in a conscious cosmos, aware of being aware, and somehow, miraculously, perfectly at home in the infinite mystery of existence itself. And as we near the end of this gentle journey into the quantum mysteries of consciousness, let's pause and consider something that might shift how you experience this very moment. If consciousness truly operates through quantum processes, if awareness really does participate in the fundamental fabric of reality, then the simple act of listening to these words, right here, right now, might be far more significant than it appears. You're not just passively receiving information. You're not just processing sounds into meaning through mechanical neural computation. Instead, if these theories hold any truth, you might be participating in a cosmic conversation that has been unfolding since the first quantum fluctuations gave birth to space and time itself. Think about what's happening as you listen. Somehow, patterns of vibration in the air are transforming into understanding in your awareness. Quantum fields are oscillating in ways that give rise to the experience of comprehension. The boundary between the information entering your mind and the consciousness that recognizes it becomes beautifully blurred, as if the universe is using your awareness to understand itself more completely. This isn't mere poetry or wishful thinking. Recent research in quantum information theory suggests that what we call physical reality might be fundamentally informational. Not that reality is made of information in some abstract sense, but that matter, energy, space, and time themselves might be emergent properties of deeper informational structures that exist beyond our ordinary perception. As we drift toward the end of our journey together, take a moment to notice something extraordinary. Right now, as these words reach your awareness, you're experiencing perhaps the most remarkable phenomenon in the entire cosmos. The simple fact that the universe has organized itself in such a way that it can contemplate its own existence through you. The quantum connection between your mind and the universe isn't just an abstract scientific theory. It's the living reality of this very moment. Every thought arising in your awareness, every sense of wonder you feel, every recognition of beauty or truth, these might be the cosmos coming to know itself through the unique lens of your individual consciousness. Whether consciousness emerges from classical neural processes or quantum fields, whether awareness is generated by your brain or accessed through it, whether individual minds are separate or fundamentally connected, these questions may never be fully resolved. But what remains constant is the extraordinary privilege of being conscious at all, of being able to wonder about your own nature and your place in the vast tapestry of existence. The mystery of consciousness doesn't diminish with our exploration, it deepens, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. In recognizing that your awareness might extend beyond the boundaries of your brain, might participate in quantum processes that connect you to the deepest structures of reality, you're not solving the mystery of what you are. You're discovering just how magnificent that mystery really is. You are not separate from the universe you inhabit. You are not a conscious observer looking at an unconscious world. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, a localized flowering of cosmic awareness, perfectly at home in the infinite field of possibility from which all experience arises. Rest in that recognition tonight. The quantum connection you sometimes feel isn't just a feeling, it might be the most accurate perception you've ever had. Sweet dreams, fellow travelers in consciousness. The universe is dreaming through you, and that dream is beautiful beyond measure.